Hi everybody, this is Kilghard, and today I'll be continuing on my recent video about choice of troop. If you haven't seen it, you know what to do. Wink wink. And I'll be talking about mostly the statistics of each unit and more importantly the ability of each unit and how to use them effectively and how it affect the strategy that you'll be using on the battlefield. First of all, very important things, training grounds units and mercenary camp units are the same whatever race you are playing. Barrack units are different between elves and humans. You'll hear about the elves being a more defensive race while the human is a more offensive race. Why is that? Simply because most units of the elves have higher hit points but lower damage inputs, while humans have, as you've guessed, lower hit points but higher damage inputs. And elves have mostly, not always, but mostly defensive abilities, which is quite apparent with the sword acrobat. Hit points, damage of the squad, attack range, movement range, initiative, and the abilities. They have the strike back abilities, meaning that the first time they are hit in close combat, they will strike back the enemy. Not a big hit, but can be some damage nonetheless, and usually effective to finish up weaker enemy units that dare to attack them. The real ability here is the disarming stance. As you can see, it reduces the opponent's attack characteristics for 2 rounds by 30%. And that's very interesting, meaning that if you have an all-sword acrobat battlefield on your side, it is better for you to put this ability, this curse, on every enemy units. You will hit them, you will kill quite a lot of them, and also you will reduce the damage that they do for the next 2 rounds. So quite an important ability to use defensively. With some case, it's better to kill off the units and deal with the others, but with the elf, mostly with the sword acrobats, you are better to spread out the damage to reduce then the damage that you'll receive afterwards. If you check another example, the archers, his ability is opponent defense minus 20% for 2 rounds. That means that every subsequent attack on a target affected by these abilities, the opponent damage will be increased for 2 rounds for every attack against it. So that's an offensive ability because it increased the damage that the enemy units received afterwards. One point with the mages that is quite interesting is that they have 2 abilities. Board Sorceress having opponent attack minus 50% for 2 rounds, and opponent defense 20% for 2 rounds also. That means that with the Sorceress having a range, an attack range of only 3, pretty much every unit they attacked, that unit will be able to attack them or another of your unit afterwards. Spread out the damage, as 50% you're cutting the enemy attack by half. So that's very effective. That means that when you attack with Board Sorceress, they will receive damage as a counter attack of the next round, but if it's against heavy melee units and heavy range units, damage taken minus 50%, and the accursed by 50% also. Sadly, that does not mean that the damage is reduced to zero. There's some kind of calculation that I don't quite understand. You still receive some damage, but it's not very much. And against EV melee, 60%, and again with the broken valor ability, 50% minus. So you face very minor damage, so you better not to concentrate your attacks on only one unit and kill it, but very effectively spread out the curse. And when the curse is out after the 2 rounds, then put it on again. If you have 5 units of sorceress versus 4 enemy units, use 4 to put a curse on the first round on each of them. The fifth can attack any one of the 4 enemy units for increased damage. Afterwards, for the second round, you can concentrate your fire to kill as much as you can. And then on the third round, the curse being dispelled or run out of its course, put it on again and continue that strategy until you win. Another thing you have to see with the trend, you have again upon an attack 30% 2 rounds, and the golem upon defense 10% 3 rounds. So not a very effective ability, but that goes on much longer. What you need to know is that those abilities are not cumulative. They apply only once. If you have 5 attacks by a golem, the 10% opponent defense don't go up to 20, 30, 40, and so on. It stays at 10%. The counter does not add up also, but if I attack one unit for 3 rounds, I attack it again the round after that, then the duration reset to 3 new rounds after my second attack. So with offensive abilities, you better go off as killing them one by one. And while you have defensive abilities, you better off spreading the curses so that limit the damage that you'll receive. That's for the elves. For the humans, strike back and charge strike. Opponent defense minus 30% for 1 round only. So with the barbarians, you better go to kill them or strongly diminish them, because the duration is only 1 round. So if you have other units with lower initiative, they can use the effect of your barbarian on the enemy units, but each barbarian is pretty much on his own about that. So that means that you have to be quite protective of your units. They have no defense of those units. They have no defensive abilities. So first strike is absolutely paramount when you're talking about most human units, because most of the time they have offensive abilities. Crossbowmen have a defensive ability. For a ranged unit, not very interesting. The priest, the mage for the humans have opponent defense 40% 2 rounds, and opponent attack 30% 2 rounds. But they have 5 attack range, which means they can hit from quite far, and that's an abilities you're gonna use a lot with humans. Although the mages is weak against light melee and light range units, it can be quite effective in thinning the herd, if I can say so, because having the mage with a quite high initiative, 13, put a curse on the unit, and then having one other of your units hit them with the increased damage is usually a big difference. Humans have a big of a problem because paladins are not that strong against light melee units. I don't agree with the 4 sword rating. In my humble opinion, it's more like a 2 or maybe 3. And the mortar is again not that strong either against light melee or light range, because the problem it has is that range is excellent, but the damage is not. Because of the high range of these units, the developer has made it so that the damage was quite reduced. And again, in my own opinion, they reduce it way too much, meaning that unless the enemy has half or no more than three-quarter of your size, it doesn't do enough. So it's not very good. Also, one thing that you need to know when you make your strategies is the different movement characteristics of the enemies. Barbarians are quite a strong unit to use, but their biggest problem is the 3 move, a movement range of only 3. Often I have wished to have just one movement more, and that's why training grounds and mercenary camp are way better in that regard, because the Cerebus, the mage killer, absolute mage killer, has a move of 7, a bit less initiative, while the drone riders have a movement of 4. It's just 1 point more, but usually it's the point that made all the difference. Oftentimes, the first round, a drone rider will reach the enemy while a barbarian will not. So when you organize your troops, you made your troop choice, always check what is strong against, what is quite less strong against, and abilities. As you can see with my Dryad as at 2 stars, no ability whatsoever yet. It appeared at the 3rd star. While for some case, for example, my Arc Warrior, he has a strike back, which is quite common for melee units at 1 star. And I don't know about the second. It's not happened yet. Or strategist against 2 stars, no special ability, only the strike back, which is quite uncommon for a ranged unit, but make your strategist a quite effective fighter on the battleground. So to resume, check out what is strong against what, check out what you want them to do, and put good use to those abilities, as they most of the time will mean the difference in a fight. And knowing when to use them, how to use them, and against who to use them can be quite effective. Often, even if you have one unit that is not strong against what you're fighting, just the ability to reduce the opponent attack or to reduce the opponent defense for the next troop that will hit will make quite a difference. So that's it, folks. Thanks you for your attention.